With Chopin's two-hand accompaniment, we'll bring in both hands to play the left-hand part. This gives us a chance to isolate and really listen to the flow of the bass line. It also allows us to do a deep dive into the harmony. And importantly, we can create with both hands a sound model that will imitate for playing left hand alone. Let's dig in a bit to the harmony here in the key of E flat. You've learned your scale, and get to know this scale really well. Go through the scale journey. Learn these tones not just for the sake of melody, but for harmony, because we could build a chord on each scale step. So here's our one chord, and that in all its inversions. Then we build on step two. So there's the two chord, and that in all its inversions. Three chord, 4, 5, and often, of course, that 5-7, adding that extra note, and take all inversions of your 5-7, then 6 and 7 and 1. A little note, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that 7 chord, that's diminished, but often it just sits right on top of that B flat. So 7 and the 5-7 are just intimately related. Okay, now let's see what Chopin does with these chord inversions. Here's our opening, and notice my right hand here is just all one chord, isn't it? It's all E flat, but that would be boring if he stayed on that too long. So here's what we could call a passing chord. And this second chord, you'll see, is notated as D diminished. So it's D with 3 half steps up, 3 half steps up, and 3 half steps up. It surrounds the E flat tone. So here's our one chord, that diminished surrounds it and comes back. And in this case, it comes back, but interestingly, a chord like that can go almost anywhere you want. So it's a very interesting chord, very useful. Here we'll call it a passing chord because it's essentially just coming right on back like that. If we were in pop music, a passing chord more likely would be the 4 chord. Or we could do a passing chord of a 5-7. But here this diminished is nice. Sometimes you do a diminished right on the same tone. So these diminished are going to be so helpful and so interesting and so utilized that before we go on, let's take a look at a couple other diminished chords. We're moving at the end of that second line to F minor, right? So that's a destination in our phrasing. So how about if we build a diminished a half step under that F minor? And that's, sure enough, that's what he does here. Let's build a diminished 7 chord, a half step underneath the 5 chord. So we have B flat, so here's our diminished 7 underneath that 5. And sure enough, here he's got that just before he closes with a big 5-7-1 cadence. Okay, so we've got one chord, and then the passing diminished 7. And here's just a passing tone, not substantial. The bass is just walking down to C, isn't it? And notice what we have on the C. That's a C7. You'd kind of expect that C to be minor, because in our key we have the E flat. But that E natural is pointing to the F, pointing to the chord coming up. And indeed, C7 is 5 of the F. So we have C7 and then to the F, but he hangs on to that diminished first and then resolves to the F minor. So now where are we? We're sitting on the 2 chord. So just like jazz, we have the 2 chord, and now it goes to the 5, and then it steps up and surrounds with the diminished and back to 5 and 1. in a way, this could have been 5 all the way through here, and maybe some diminished, and finally back to 1. But what Chopin does is he takes this bass line, and instead of staying on the B flat, he circles above it and back underneath and coming around to the B flat. We could call that an enclosure because we're enclosing around that tone. And now we need a harmony for each of those enclosure notes. So B flat 7, and this next one might be really interesting to use our descending 5, descending by fifths. Remember we did C7 to F, which is then B flat 7 and 5. That's all coming right on down. C down a fifth, down a fifth, down a fifth. So if we go a little higher up here, we go a fifth higher than the C. So we get a G7 coming to the C minor, then the F7, and B flat 7 and E flat. So we're following down a circle of fifths there through the enclosure. G7 to C, and here we could use an F7, or we use the diminished that we had talked about. And then here we are on our B flat 7 chord, but he hangs on to that E flat, he suspends that 4th scale tone, and then resolves it and back to 1.